I strongly disagree with the fact that now I'm less stable than having a law career.
So what we've learned about you is the fact that you were like a tea connoisseur by the age of 16, but coffee, no clue.
At the age of 16, right, I go and work at this personal injury firm, and they asked me to call an insurance company on behalf of the law firm.
That had nothing to do with law. That had everything to do with just mowing someone down.
At least 50 about different accidents, and it goes into you, and you start then worrying about every single thing that you do, like, oh, I don't want to lose my arm because I milked a cow.
Did they squeeze the other too hard?
It's literally killing me. I just can't go back. It's just a nightmare. The only place that I can actually get a bit of respite is sat on the bloody toilet. I think the real thing that pushed me over the edge.
So Holly, I'm really excited about this particular episode because I want to hear more about your journey and more about you. I feel like I know you pretty well by now, and obviously we've covered so many really cool things around where you are now, having set up your business, you're living in Spain, you're leading this just incredible life. But I'd love to know more about how you got here, how you got from law to an entrepreneur to podcasting, because it wasn't like you just left law and had this podcasting business, right? There was a whole journey in between that. How you got into law, like, were you always really passionate about it? Did you think that was your forever thing? Then what even made you want to leave law? And then when you did leave law, how did you leave law? Like, I'm just really curious about sort of, I suppose, rewinding all the way back to Holly Cope at university. Like, where did all of it come from? Your passion for law, how did you get there?
That's a tricky one. I always had two passions, I would say. But the first one was music, and that was pretty much for my whole life. And then when I hit 18, or, when you're deciding what to do at college, I was like, well, I can't do music because that's not a real job. So it's too like unstable, basically. So I ruled that one out. Obviously, I know that's not true, but I ruled it out. Okay.
And just to jump in there for a minute, because I'm really interested about this, because I think this will end up linking back in a bit later. When you say it was too unstable, didn't feel right for you, was that your voice? Was that your parents' voice? Because obviously you do something now which is a lot more unstable than being a lawyer, right? So I'm just curious about Holly Cope, age 18. Like, what was this voice of music's too unstable or whatever?
By the way, I strongly disagree with the fact that now I'm less stable than having a law career. I strongly disagree with that. But anyway, that's another thing. Okay, music. It was more the voice of society rather than anything else. It wasn't even anyone close to me. It was just society. I don't know. Like, I guess I had a friend, or I have a friend whose parents are singers, and she told me, they go around doing gigs, and they travel around, and they it's not like stable income. It's they have to go out and search for this, this income, and they perform, and it's fun, but it's like not secure type of thing. And I just thought, I don't really want that. At the same time, I really like the idea of law, and I decided at the age of 16 I'm going to contact a few law firms in my area and ask them if I can work for them, just as work experience, just to see if I like that environment. And at the age of 16, right, I go and work at this personal injury firm, and they throw me in the deep end, which was actually really quite good looking back. But I was like so bloody nervous on my first day. I was like, I don't know what to expect. I'm literally 16 years old. I haven't worked in like an actual proper job. I wasn't confident. I turn up, they're like, right, like spend the first day listening to the conversations that people are having, then when they're interviewing people who've been through like tragic accidents on, motorbikes and stuff, and listen to them about how they talk and empathize with people. So I was like, right, okay. So I spend the one day listening. The next day they go to me, right, we need you to call this insurance company because they've not come back to us. They're ignoring our emails, and we need a response about, I don't even know what. So I was like, right, okay. So I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? At this point, I remember, right, someone asked me to make them a coffee. I'd never made a coffee in my life. So this is at what point I was in my life. I didn't know how to make a coffee.
Sorry, in your family, did no one ever get you to make a coffee? Or was it always you being like, Mum, coffee? Or just no one drink coffee? Sorry,
No,
it's
I know how
really
to make
a
tea.
detailed point.
I got.
Well, we know you know how to make tea. We know which shade of brown it is. We know it all.
I'm literally crying. I need a tissue.
Oh
Oh
my
my
god, we
god.
can't do T 2.0. Come on. Just for anyone listening, the reference to this is our first ever water cooler episode, which got hijacked by the theme of tea, which dominated 50%. We highly recommend this episode. Please do go back and watch for comedy value, if nothing else.
Oh
Oh my
my
gosh,
gosh.
she's gone. Go
I'm
on.
gonna have to stop thinking about that because I'll literally cry for like 5 minutes and I don't want to do that. But
Okay.
oh my gosh.
So what we've learned about you is the fact that you were like a tea connoisseur by the age of 16, but coffee, no clue. Embarrassingly so. Like in Italy, they would have been ashamed of you, type thing.
Exactly. I didn't know how to make coffee. Okay. So imagine the mental maturity levels that I had, and they asked me to call an insurance company on behalf of the law firm. And I was like, okay. So I sit down, I'm like, how am I going to approach this? Bearing in mind, it's an office of like, what do you call those offices where everyone's in it and everyone can hear everyone talking?
Open plan.
Yes, open plan. So everyone could hear. So I was like, right, what do I say? What do I say? And I thought, okay, when someone's not happy with someone, they get annoyed. So that's how I should approach this. I should approach it with an annoyed tone. So I call them and I'm like, can I speak to blah blah? I was like, you've not got back to us. We need this piece of information. If you don't get back to us by the end of the day, then I don't remember what I said, but I remember being really like harsh. And like when I put the phone down and everyone started clapping.
Oh my god.
They were like, that was amazing. They were like, well done. And then I got invited for drinks later and I was like, guys, I'm 16. I can't come.
Basically illegal at that point, probably.
Yeah. But I was like,
Oh my
at
god.
that point, I was like, I think I can do this if that's what
Yeah,
it takes. But
100%.
I
Yeah.
just found it super interesting. I really liked it. So I guess that's what triggered it. And then I was like, yeah, I'm interested in law. I'm interested in knowing the legalities of different situations. So that's where it begun, basically.
You know, that had nothing to do with law. That had everything to do with just mowing someone down. It's that I object.
Well, I'd only ever known law on TV, and that's
Yeah.
very dramatic. So imagine me going from that, like seeing that on TV and just being like, that's the only way I know, just being dramatic. So let's just be dramatic on the phone, and everyone loved it. They
I
weren't
love it.
expecting it.
Gosh. So this spurred you on to be a lawyer. You didn't become a personal injury lawyer in the end, but it sounds like you had quite a dramatic start. So that sort of, is that what sparked your passion for it then? And you were like, well, I have to study this at uni. I've got to take down insurance companies, steamroller them, get my round of applause at the end of every day.
No, I think I was always interested in it. It's a prestigious industry. I wanted to do something cool. I love English words. I was like, I don't know. I basically did A-level law and decided at that point I find it very interesting because we were learning about criminal, about, civil law and stuff. And I just thought, this is cool. This is really cool. And then into uni, I also really enjoyed studying it. I loved the cases. I loved understanding it, different laws. It was cool. I really, really liked it. So yeah, that's how I felt about it, really.
And then once you'd been to university and kind of studied it and you're interested in it, what was your journey into the legal world? Was it easy? Did you bag a job quickly? Did you paralegal first? Like, how did you even know what type of firms to go for? Like, what was your journey there?
So initially, when I finished my law degree, I decided to go to Spain. So I lived in Spain for a bit teaching English because I just always loved Spain, the language. So I thought I wanna do that. So that's what I did. Then after about a year or so, I was like, right, I want to look for for jobs in law because I want to start working in law now. I looked at potentially doing a conversion for Spain, like a law conversion, so I could start working in law in Spain. But then I was like, I don't know enough legal Spanish to be confident enough to be able to do that like right this second. So basically, I just look for any type of job within a law firm to because I also thought, okay, do I want to become a solicitor? What do I want to do? And I thought, well, it'd be daft to do the LPC, do the qualifications to become a solicitor when I don't even know if I actually like working in the industry. Like, what's the point taking the time and paying a lot of money to get that qualification if I don't like it? So let's look for jobs in law firms and see if I like it first. So the very first job that I got within a law firm was actually personal injury. And it was like just taking claims and doing the initial parts of personal injury claims. But also at the same time, I was also on a legal helpline. So anyone could call in and ask me any legal question, like anything, like, I've got a problem with this. What do I do about this? Got a problem with this. What do I do about this? Yeah, to everyone, it would sound like a nightmare. And it was a nightmare. I was having dreams of like telephones ringing and imagine being put on the spot with someone being like, what do I do in this random scenario? And it's like the stupidest things you've ever heard, literally the stupidest things you've ever heard. And I was just like, oh my gosh. But I got to grips with a lot of different laws and I had to type out advice and write reports. And it was actually, I was thrown so much in the deep end that it did me the world of good because in that first job, I learned how to think on the spot. I learned how to speak with people properly, write proper emails, formal emails, and like all these things. And I just thought, even though this is the worst job ever, it was actually really, really good. But then after that, I went into immigration, and that was like my passion in law, basically.
Okay, before we get to immigration, though, I just want to know what was the weirdest thing anyone asked you on the phone, like for the piece of legal advice. They call you up, put on the spot. What was it?
One thing that stands out to me was someone trying to make a personal injury claim based on milking a cow.
What? What? What did they do? Did they squeeze the udder too hard or something? Wait, sorry, it wasn't. Presumably, it wasn't the cow suing the person. Actually, so, well, did they get kicked in the face? I bet they got kicked in the face.
No, they didn't. It was to do with the udders. But it was like I can't even remember the proper details, right? But I remember the person saying to me, I don't know, that it was like a little bit dangerous. It was like an employer liability claim. And I was just
Wow.
like, I wish I could remember the ins and outs of this because I remember going to my manager being like, have you heard this? It's crazy. And like, I've never heard anything like it, but it was like the funniest thing and the weirdest thing at the same time, but I can't remember the details.
Okay, cool. So after the cow udder incident, you at some point decided that probably PI wasn't for you. You went to immigration. You said that became your passion. What was it you liked about immigration?
Can I just say that working in PI made me so paranoid about everything, like, paranoid about falling over or like
Yeah.
anything. I was so conscious of accidents. But yeah, anyway,
No,
immigration was good.
it's interesting you say that about PI actually, because I think this sort of feeds into something we often talk about in relation to like the lawyer mindset and how, we all have a negativity bias in life anyway, that, we'll think of the potential negative repercussions of our actions because that's what's kept us safe over millennia, right? From cavemen and probably before then. But there's this whole thing about as lawyers, we are literally trained like Navy SEALs to spot any potential risk. And I think like the PI thing, I can really see it's a bit like my aunt used to be a nurse over in Bermuda. And she just used to talk about how, never ever get on a scooter abroad because, she obviously saw all of the scooter accidents. And I'm just glad that I've never seen that because now I'm scooting around Bali every day. Like, there on the roads, hair in the wind. I do wear a helmet. And most of the time I wear a helmet. But yeah, I
Oh
think
my
it's an
God.
interesting point. I think you're right. I'm glad I wasn't a personal injury lawyer for that reason, because you must just see it
Mm.
all, right?
You do. I think you will underestimate the impact of speaking to, I would say, I don't know how many people a day, like at least 50, about different accidents. And it goes into you, and you start then worrying about every single thing that you do. Like, oh, I don't want to lose my arm because I milked a cow. Do you know what I mean?
What? Oh my god.
No, immigration was a good fit for me because I love the idea of allowing people to move around the world, being free. And so facilitating that was brill. And that was where I went into more of a Fiona role. Well, it was a Fiona role. And I had my own like paralegal, and it was more, I don't know, it was better. I definitely preferred it. It seemed like absolute luxury when you're sat there, the phone's ringing, and it's not your job to answer it. That's what I loved about it, like initially.
Yeah, God, I can imagine that. Well, that's a different type of role, isn't it? Sort of being there to answer any call and deal with any kind of stuff like that. I mean, that's certainly not my experience of, I don't know, being a lawyer. I guess there's so many ways in which we can be lawyers out there, you know. But so,
Yeah.
okay, is a sort of, I appreciate it's a bit of a whistle stop tour, but it sounds like you went into law, you really enjoyed it. So you've been passionate about it since, a young age, since 16 at least. What happened then? Because you didn't stay that long in law, right? Before you sort of jacked it in and actually set off for a life of entrepreneurship. So how did that happen?
True. Well, you know what? Sounds crazy, but I was in the industry for 7 years, and I know that's probably not that long. It's not that long in the grand scheme of things, but it was enough time for me to realize certain things. I think basically what actually happened was when you have like a moment where you're like, right, this was the turning point for me. I was probably about 5 years in, and I wanted to take a trip to India with my brother, and we wanted to go for a few weeks, but I realized that I was only allowed to take off 13 maximum consecutive working days. It was going to be like 13 or 14 days. And I was really nervous about going to HR and being like, I want to take off 14 days. I know my contract says I'm only allowed to take off 13 days, but this is a special trip, etc. And they were like, okay, yeah, fine, go. I went, and I got to India, and I was like having this cool experience and whatnot. And I was just like, I just don't want to go back. I just can't go back. It's just a nightmare. The idea of going to an office and working. This is a crazy thing. Like, I haven't really told many people this, but when I was working in an office, I would go at a lot of different points in the day. This sounds like a bit crazy, but I'd go and I'd literally sit on the toilet, like with the lid down.
I'm glad you specified that. Thank you.
I know. I know. For like 10 minutes. Because I was like, I need a break. I can't just sit there for 10 minutes at my desk not doing anything because people are going to look at me weird. I can't go outside for a walk because people are going to look at me weird. I can't do anything. The only place that I can actually get a bit of respite is sat on the bloody toilet. And I was like, I just need space. Like, I cannot look at this screen all day. It's literally killing me. So I was just like, after that trip to India, I was like, things need to change. And then that is the moment in which I started trying to look for other things. It was also the moment where 2 months later, a few months later, probably 3 months later, the pandemic hit. So it gave me a chance to actually take a step back, work from home, and get some breathing space and figure out what am I going to do next.
So you've told stories before on LinkedIn, on podcasts about, the toxicity in firms you've worked at, really quite shocking stories, I think, of things that have happened to you. Shocking incidents, toxicity, etc., that actually kind of caused you to leave in the end? Or was it just that was the backdrop of being in a law firm, and actually it was kind of this more restrictive life which you describe around, oh, I can only get X days holiday, oh, I can only get my proper breather if I go to the bathroom? I appreciate not all law firms might be like that, by the way, for listeners, but just thinking, was it this restriction, or was it actually the toxicity? Like, what was the real thing that pushed you over that edge?
I think the real thing that pushed me over the edge would have been the restrictions and the fact that I couldn't work from home at this point. Like, it wasn't really an option. I couldn't go to the dentist when I wanted to. I couldn't go on a holiday when I wanted to. Even when I gave in a request to go on holiday, it took them about 3 weeks to come up with the answer, and sometimes it might be no, and it's like, "Well, the flights have gone up now, so don't even bother." And it's like, it was that restriction, I think, of just not being in control of my life, basically. I mean, the toxicity thing is a different matter, and I was surrounded by it so much that it just became normal, and I just thought that's just how you work. Like, that's just what it's meant to be like when you work in general. So it wasn't necessarily something that pushed me. It was more the restriction. But then as I was like trying to find a way out, and I was just like, I just want to travel and work, the toxicity started getting to be more. And I was like, I just can't take this anymore. It's just becoming a bit ridiculous now.
I find that really interesting because I can resonate, because people often say to me like, oh gosh, you know, you left law because it was so toxic, or this, that, or the other. And I'm like, no, I didn't in the end. I just got a bit fed up with quite a lot of different things. In the end, thought I could have a cooler life trying to do something else. And I think people often think, don't they, it was this big thing, or someone got fired, or someone got burnt out, or whatever. And I think also we get quite normalized in law to the toxicity, just generally, that we don't even see that's weird anymore. It's just like, oh, that's life, that's office life, that's law, you know. So I just find it really interesting that you're like, actually, for you, it was more of the freedom factor. I mean, it almost sounds like, look, I'm an entrepreneur now, so I'm out of that. But it reminds me, and it's almost like, yeah, you need a permission slip for just living your life. I think once you've tasted the freedom of no longer needing that permission slip, the idea of going back is terrible.